Hello everybody. Welcome to Grounded Roots Healing. My name is Jason. I'm an alchemist. Started learning about druidry, and I have a strong feeling that might be in my future. Very interesting, essentially naturalists, born naturalists. Today I want to talk about the energy of money, how to manifest it, and what it is. And it's not a short answer, and there is no easy way to do it, in my opinion. If you're looking for a write this down 7 times, do this before bed kind of manifestation trick, those things are just what I describe them as, tricks. And they work in a sense in that it is a way to fool you into thinking that they actually work. Okay, so before I get started, I have a Patreon and PayPal account linked to this, which is critical because the energy of money needs to be directed in my way. And I've historically, due to the conditioning of society, had a really difficult time asking for money, valuing myself properly, and receiving any help from anyone. This has been my biggest challenge in life. Well, one of them. It's certainly the biggest on my path to success because, like I said, society conditions us to look at money a certain way and not be able to receive it. Because if you were to receive it and you were to understand how money works, the energy of it, you would become extremely successful and you would be one of the good guys that becomes extremely successful. Now, if you're playing for the other team, you obviously don't want this. So, like many of the things in our lives, they're structured in a way to hold us down. And this is, if not the most important, I can't see any other way that, like this, the world runs on money, whether you like that or not. So therefore money is power and influence. And in order to keep the influence in the hands of the people who are on the opposing force, they have to make us think that money is the root of all evil. Now, what is it? You think of a fiat currency, which used to be a paper note, which is a promissory note, that if you give this to someone, they will give you a certain amount of goods in return for it. Essentially what it is distilled labor. So you put in a certain amount of work. We have this fiat system developed to value that work at a certain amount of currency, and then you receive that certain amount of currency for the amount of work you've done, and then you go and you use that stuff to buy items, which are also produced in the same currency system. So the farmer, say you're buying a grocery, the farmer has spent money and time and energy into growing those crops. Someone has shipped them there, and then someone has built the building that these things are put into. I'm not saying this is the right way that it should be done, but it is the current system. So essentially, it's a way to value labor, and it's twisted and designed that way. So what's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with that. We've always done this as a society. To any point where we've started to specialize, we started bartering, and we've done the same thing. This is valuing one thing for another. Even in hunter-gatherer societies where they share everything, There's a division of labor at the very least, and certain members of society in those groups are, maybe their labor is valued more than what other people are doing. So it would take more of their currency, which is, say, some caught wild game, for the shaman to do a ritual for that individual. So they were exchanging goods, and this has been the way we do anything. So all we've done here is assign a number on it, and in the past it was paper. So this distilled labor of energy of labor, is represented by the currency. The energy is already spent into producing the item, and then the energy is consumed as you eat it. But the representation of that energy is in this paper, which isn't paper at all anymore. It's just a number in a computer system tallied up. Well, if a certain group were in charge of the system, you would want to make it so that you want to, a certain group that thrives off of fear and suffering was in control of the system. They would want it to be as painful as possible. So what you would do is you would create a system that initially worked quite well, where it was possible for you to get ahead, and it was possible for you to at least be comfortable in the society, so that you would become completely ingrained in it. And you would do things like make food extremely cheap to stop people from growing their own food, because it actually didn't make sense to do such things. And then you would lose all the knowledge on how to grow your own food, and then they would slowly but surely increase the amount of currency it took to buy that said food in order to keep pressure on you. So now they've eliminated ways for you to be self-sustaining and abundance. And then you would create artificial scarcity. You would all of this is based on energy, and all of the modern manufacturing and farming techniques require copious amounts of energy, and most of that's in the form of petroleum of some kind, either coal, petroleum. So this energy is what we were putting our money into, which is extracted from the ground. So our fiat currency was getting tied to this. And then you start making large corporations to start acquiring all of this currency and stockpiling it. Meanwhile, putting us all into copious amounts of debt, because it's becoming harder and harder to feed ourselves. This insidious system that, hypothetically exists, it would be very hard to get out of. But what it doesn't mean is that money is the root of all evil. This has been what we've been taught in our, mainly religious systems. That if you're a religious or spiritual person, you're supposed to want to do that for nothing. That nothing is the right amount of money you should require to be a spiritual person, because it's the root of all evil. Now, to express how asinine this is, I'll use a hypothetical example. Who would you rather have all the money? Say tomorrow we could take all of that currency, distilled labor that's sitting in giant corporations, multinational corporations. We could take it all back and then distribute it to people in the society that, based on the amount of good they would do. Would you, I try not to use names, but say there's a computer software billionaire that has been buying up a lot of farmland and pushing certain medical procedures, I guess you call them procedures, medical inoculations on us. Would you rather him have the larger portion of the money, him or her? Or would you rather Mother Teresa have the money? Who do you think has a better moral compass and would do more good with that money? Is she supposed to not want to have control over that distilled labor and redistribute it to the people that need it the most? Or would you rather, like I said, this hypothetical tech billionaire? I know who I would choose. And I've said this before, that, well, we need to change our attitude towards money. There's nothing wrong with, in the system that exists today, having money. Nothing at all. What's wrong with it is greed. If you are an ungreedy person, if you are an empath, if you can put your ego to the side and do what's best for the maximum amount of people with that money, then I want you to have that money. I don't want it to go into the hands of the people that already have it, and most of it's not in the hands of people in reality. Like I said, there are very, very, very big companies that hold a lot of this debt that we've somehow acquired for ourselves, even though I've never agreed to borrow billions of dollars to do the things that we do as a country. But I am saddled with it, and so are my children. Can you see the method of control, how that might work? Now you're completely you don't have any ability to make any changes in this society of any real kind, because the political systems and the money are in the hands of the people where they want it to be. But what I've seen is that there will be a rebalancing, let's say, where the entire monetary system is going to change. It's not going to happen overnight. Well, parts of it may, but the entire system changing is not going to happen overnight. It's going to change slowly, to the point where eventually there won't be any variation in the types of currency based on which country you're in, and you won't lose exchange rates and things like this, so that, these artificial borders and fiat systems, which are designed to keep certain groups of people even and countries poor and others rich, those will go away as well. So for the meantime, we need to, as spiritual beings and light workers, we want to acquire this money. Now, I said that manifestation, you should be able to just write this down 7 times, do this particular thing, and then you'll have your money. Maybe it'll work. I haven't had any luck with this. And the meek shall inherit the earth. And that means the people that will do the most good with this money are going to be the ones who acquire it. It doesn't mean if you write this down 7 times you're going to have a Lambo. This is just the ego feeding the ego, and it's part of the old system. What we're trying to do is get this money into the hands of the people who have dropped their ego, and as a consequence dropped the greed. Now, greed only occurs because we feel like we're separate beings, that we're not all one. How could you be greedy? How could you hoard money when someone else is suffering, when that other person is you? How could you do that? It's gotten to the point where I look at everything on this outside world and it's so ass backwards, I can't even comprehend it. I have no greed left. I have no aspirations of acquiring anything except some space and some peace. And I want that for as many people as possible. So I feel like I've killed that ego that's caused me to maybe be a little bit materialistic in the past. It's gotten to the point where I just don't care at all. I know this doesn't matter. The true joy in life doesn't come from anything financial, except when you can give finances to someone and see the joy in their eyes knowing that they now have this giant weight lifted off their shoulders, or that they're secure in the food supply that they have, or that they have a roof over their heads, which they never thought they'd have. This is what excites me. I wish, I pray that I'm one of these people, because selfishly I would love nothing more than to get the joy out of distributing this money to the people who actually need it. You know, I worked in Tanzania at one point. And you talk about, well, a perfect example of all of this stuff. The rampant greed and corruption in that country is like none I've ever been in. Well, there's many like it, but it's one of the worst. There's extortion. I tried to help a Maasai friend of mine that I met while I was working down there by raising some money for him to open a business so that he could hopefully support his community. And the corruption that is rampant in the system made it to the point where he couldn't even open this business, or they just would have taken all the meager funds that we were able to acquire to send him. So he spent it on his village, and which is the wisest thing he could have done. But the exchange rate was unbelievably low. There's no possibility for anyone from there, unless you're extremely rich in that country, to even leave Tanzania and come to Canada and actually consider affording anything. And then, I mean, they were getting paid 25 cents Canadian a day to run security operations where I was working. It's unbelievably corrupt. The fact that the oil company would allow that to even happen in the first place is, oil companies, they all do this. It's scandalous. It's wrong. So, you as an empath, you beat your head off a wall and you try to help, and then you just get so discouraged because it's impossible, at least in the current system, the way it is. So I'm waiting and I'm praying for this to change, and then I'm looking at my own country, which is, much better. The standard of living is higher. But the corruption and greed here is unbelievable as well. Like, our provincial government released a budget, and it's all a pile of smoke and mirrors. You're just shifting money around to try to keep votes so that you stay in power. And meanwhile, gathering up all those tax dollars, which are built off the backs of us, into a pool, and then extorting as much of it, not extorting, but money laundering as much of that as they can into their own pockets. And if they can't do that, they'll do things like open schools in their particular, where their kids go to school, brand new schools, when we have no budget for anything. And meanwhile, cutting teachers' pensions and teachers' pay, and it's just, half of this place is in food insecurity, the other half I don't know how anyone affords to live here. And it's getting worse every year. So this redistribution of wealth, it can't come soon enough, in my opinion. So in order to manifest, what you need to do is heal yourself. The only way to do this is the only way the universe is going to see fit for you to acquire copious amounts of money is if you're going to do the right thing with it. And the only way you're going to get to the point where you're wise enough to do that is by healing yourself and pushing that monkey mind, the ego, to the back seat. And as soon as you do that, you're going to be in a high enough vibrational frequency that the universe will now see fit to put this stuff in your lap. At least that's what I'm banking on. This what this whole year has been about. This whole world and the way it runs hurts me. It hurts my heart, and it's hard to live here. It's hard to watch this. You know, I've watched in Tanzania. I had a heartbreaking incident. Like, I went to these remote villages close to Mozambique, and they had nothing. I mean, they were making pennies, dragging, I don't know how much weight it was, but a ridiculous amount of charcoal on their back that they made from bushwood, and they were bringing it to the coastline on these old rickety bicycles. And they had mud huts, and, you know, the kids were... I drove by this house that was a mud hut, and the dad sitting outside, and the kid was pushing a tire with like a burlap sack for pants, pushing a tire with a stick. But they were smiling and laughing. And then I went to the big major city, which is 5 million people, I believe. And there was this group of 4 children sitting under a tree in this 35 degrees Celsius heat, with rags on, and people panhandling with physical injuries and deformities in the middle of the road. And the taxi driver that I was in the car with said that don't give them the money, because all they do is take it back to these churches, and then the churches funnel the money in, and they feed them as best they can. That's it. But most of the money goes to the head of the church. So even the people that are supposed to be bringing God to these places and helping the people find God are abusing the system too. This isn't just Tanzania. This goes around a lot of places. But that vision of those 4 children sitting under that tree is burnt into my brain. And it was... well, that day broke me. You know, I had hope for the earth at that point, up until that point, and then after that, I was never the same. I went home, and you know, my life went downhill because I was, you know, this is just occurring to me now, but you know, that's when I started drinking more, and this is when I lost faith that it was going to get better. I've got it back. I do know that things are going to get better. I'm just getting tired of waiting, and I would really like to be able to help some of these people. Help myself, even. You know, I'm trying to make a go at this, and I'm trying to do what God is directing me to do to take care of my own family, and even that's proving difficult. So I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying. And to that point, I have my first Patreon subscriber, Scotty. Thank you for subscribing. I'm really appreciative of it, man. It's a big milestone for me, and I'm kind of blown away that you did that, and I appreciate it. I've tacked on an hour-long conversation with that tier of that you signed up for. So whenever you'd like to, we can have a conversation. I'd really like to do that. So, And there are other tiers there. If anyone would like to get some coaching from me, there's tiers in my Patreon, and I do provide coaching. Try to explain where you're at on this journey as far as I can see, and if you're not interested in any of that, then just a phone conversation with me would be great as well. So I think I'll leave it there. Like I always say, I hope this video finds you well. I love you all. I really do. We're all in this together. We're all the same. And we'll see you soon.